The views and opinions expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Reproduction or dissemination other than for the purpose of education or information without the express written permission of the Phoenix Research Institute or Nova Society Media is strictly prohibited. Just a quick program note, the Nova Society will be off tomorrow, Tuesday, December 31st, and Wednesday, January 1st, and we will return on Thursday, January 2nd, at the beginning of season number 4, and we hope you join us.
Welcome to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with the panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. Today, our panel will be answering listener emails, and the question is from Stephen, who lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and Stephen asks, is it St. Louis, Missouri, or St. Louis, Missouri? Do you know?
I think it's St. Louis.
St. Louis. All right. Our question is from Stephen, who lives in St. Louis, Missouri, and Stephen asks, so I see the Fed is ready to cut rates again. Is this a response to the possible tariffs that President-elect Trump may introduce? Will these cuts help at all to ease the impact of the tariffs?
So as we speak, the Federal Reserve did cut rates by a quarter point, right? I think the Dow was down a little bit today. I think that they were expected to cut rates, so they did, because one of the things that the Fed tries to do is be consistent and not overly reactive. Are we going to see cuts next year? I'm going to guess probably we will. I think we'll probably get two more cuts, and that will probably be it. And then what we'll see from Trump as far as the Fed is concerned is probably a move to dissolve the Fed altogether, because Trump has stated, and there's no reason why we should not take him seriously when he says stuff like this, that he knows more about the economy than the Fed does, and that he wants to be the one to make those decisions. And so my guess is that, there will be some kind of movement to get rid of the Fed altogether and give the president the power to make all these monetary decisions.
Yeah, back to the days of Andrew Jackson. Is it a response to the tariffs? I don't think so. I agree with Scott. I think it's a matter of the Fed trying to continue being consistent and not reactionary. That has been their function. Slow and steady wins the race is kind of their attitude. So I don't think it has anything to do at this point with the possible tariffs that he may introduce. Because first of all, they really don't know what tariffs are going to be introduced. It's a little hard to make those decisions beforehand. So yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, maybe it was in the back of their mind, maybe. But I do think it was just simply a matter to show the consistency that the Federal Reserve has always shown. Will these cuts help to ease the impact of the tariffs? No, they will not. They're not going to make the price of eggs come down. They're not going to make the price of gasoline come down. They're not going to make the price of bacon come down. They're not going to, none of that stuff. This really has to do with the interest rates that people borrow money. And remember, this is the prime interest rate. This is not the interest rate that most people get. This is the interest rate that corporations get. Will it help with jobs? Again, if the tariffs hurt the supply chain coming in, all the interest rate cuts in the world aren't going to help industry. If you're not getting the steel and the raw materials you need to be able to do business, interest rates mean nothing, because you're not going to be borrowing money if you're not able to produce anything. So, no, I don't see these cuts. And even if Scott's correct and they do two more cuts next year, I don't see that as going to be very helpful at all, because of just for the reasons that I mentioned. There's only so much you can do. First of all, we have to see what the tariffs are actually going to be, if they're actually going to be tariffs, or if he was just talking out the side of his face like he normally does. and what those tariffs are on. And then once we see that, like I say, if he puts that tariff on Canada and the price of your toilet paper goes up 50%, interest rate cuts aren't going to impact that in the least. It's going to have no effect whatsoever onto that.
And without the Fed and with a president such as President Trump making the decisions, what do you anticipate the effect on the economy is going to be when he starts making those decisions?
Weimar, Germany. Like
geez.
wheelbarrows full of money to buy a loaf of bread.
That bad.
That bad. Yeah, I mean, look, there are going to be tariffs, right? I mean, he can do it. He said he's going to do it. So why wouldn't we think that there are going to be tariffs? And there are going to be tariffs against, yes, our nearest neighbors, Mexico and Canada, as well as China and the EU. And all of these things are inflationary. There's going to be enormous price rises. There will be shortages of everything. There will be, utter chaos, people running wild in the streets. Stockpile now, right? People are going out and buying bags and bags of dog food and toilet paper and paper towels and things like that because they're not going to be available this time next year, maybe probably a lot sooner than that. And the Federal Reserve, for as long as it can, will drop rates a couple more times to try to counteract the inflation, but they can only have so far to drop now. There are some people in the Fed I know that today who said that they were against dropping them now because they're going to need that space to drop them in the next year. And if we drop them now, we can't drop them then, and they want to start cutting. We're up against it, let's say. And I mean, I just don't know how you can't see it. Like, is there anybody out there who can't see what's coming? There's no reason to think that Trump is kidding about this, right? Or using it as leverage for some kind of negotiation. He seems to think that he can sell the idea of cutting income tax and corporate taxes and replacing it with essentially a incredibly regressive VAT, or tariffs that will raise prices on people who can least afford it. And this is going to drive consumer prices, sky high. I don't know any conservatives or Republicans that I talk to who really think that this is going to happen. They all seem to think that this is a negotiating ploy, but it's going to happen. It's not it may be a negotiating ploy, but it's still going to happen because nobody out there is going to bend to his will. He can't make Canada the 51st state. He can't force Mexico to end our drug problem here. If fentanyl doesn't come from Mexico, it'll be made here. I mean, it's like you see this wave of loserism coming, and there hasn't been a will to stop it. The election's over. He's going to be the president, and we're heading for a world of shit.
Yes. I completely agree.
God, I wish I didn't have to say that.
I know. But, it's true. You asked for it. You got it. There it is. And don't be, we said this during the election, nobody's coming to rescue us. Well, guess what? Now nobody really is going to come to rescue us.
Yeah.
So America first is America alone. And Americans, congratulations, you are now alone. The rest of the world laughs at you. And, they're basically just sitting back and saying, wow, that American experiment didn't last very long.
And oh my God. Yeah. Like you had a good thing, but you couldn't, like, Fox didn't tell you it was good, so you didn't know.
That's right.
And then, there were drag queens and trans people playing sports, and that was a more important thing than the economy. And well, you thought the economy was bad anyway. Look, yeah, you deserve what you get. If you're as stupid as the American people seem to be right now, you deserve it. You ask for it and you're going to get it.
That's right. You always get the government you deserve. And to those people that voted for him, to those people that sat home and didn't engage in the process, you have gotten the government you deserve. And it's a shame. But hey, we will see what happens next year.
So on that note,
Merry Christmas.
That's right.
Happy holidays to anybody who celebrates, and we will see you next year in 2025. We have some guest speakers coming on in January and in February, so watch for those. Some really important people. I don't want to announce too far out in advance, but these are notable speakers. And
more important than us?
Huh?
Not more important than us.
Well, the Boundies and the Gershwerites or Gershwerettes or however you want to describe them. Yes. No, not important. More important than you. But we look forward. Thank you again to all our listeners, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. And happy holidays to everyone who celebrates, and do look after yourselves. All the best.
So that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Journal of Interdisciplinary Conflict Science. The JCIS is an open journal for upcoming scholars. The JCIS is currently accepting article submissions on an ongoing basis. The JCIS is a publication of Nova Works, a scholarly depository at Nova Southeastern University. A link to the journal is in our description. We'd also like to thank our podcast partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, who is our editing partner, and Podkite, who does all of our analytics. We'd also like to thank iHeartRadio, where people get their music and podcasts, Apple iTunes, the largest source for music and podcasts on the internet, Spotify, the most popular source for the Nova Society. The Nova Society is available on all these and other quality platforms mentioned in our description. We'd also like to thank our listeners. Without you, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a comment, a question, or would like to be a guest on the Nova Society, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. Always remember, the power of society is knowledge. So for Dr. Scott Gershwer, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Priscilla Hobbs, and all of us here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Be well, and we hope to see you again next time.